Hello everyone and welcome to the session of Econivas Samhita, a residential building energy efficiency code. Dr. Purba Keskar will be presenting in this session. The code implementation activities is being undertaken by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency and GIZ under Indo-German Energy Program. Let's begin with the presentation.
I'm going to talk about not only the scope of the code, but also step-by-step compliance that can be achieved for residential buildings. Electricity consumption in India is growing, and we all know that almost 33% of the total energy is being used by the building sector, and one predicts that this share may go up to 50%. Also, out of the total energy that is being consumed by the building sector, one realizes that 75% of this energy is being consumed by residential buildings. We know that residential buildings don't consume as much as commercial buildings, but we understand that the number of residential buildings are really very high compared to commercial buildings, and a small tweak in the way residential buildings are designed and operated may really affect the overall demand of energy for the residential sector. Also, we have realized over time that the way we live is changing. The concept of thermal comfort that we demand is changing. We are really wanting more and more thermal comfort in our houses. And also, we need to check whether this kind of a thermal comfort is being offered by way of energy efficient means. So here there is a place, there is an opportunity to save energy at the same time giving comfort to people. We have also observed in the last few years that the electricity consumption in India in the domestic sector is going up. And you realize that the percentage growth is almost 9 to 13%. And one realizes that post 2017 and post maybe even now, today, which is after COVID, we are going to think of our indoor environments differently. Probably we may need more air ventilation rates to happen in our buildings so that inside air remains healthy and clean. So things are going to change, and we predict that the demand of energy in the residential sector is going to go up. So what has changed in the last few years? We have seen that in vernacular architecture, yes, there was a lot of thought given to the environment. There was a very exclusive approach towards dealing with, the indoor environment and the outdoor environment. Architects did consider the outdoor environment before designing the indoor environment. And what separated the outside and the inside was the envelope. And when we say the envelope, it's not only the envelope, it's the entire form of the building. So in vernacular architecture, you saw that people took care of adding more air into the building, restricting the heat that is coming inside the building. Even when the British came into India, they also had a very sensitive approach, and one realized that they dealt with the fenestration in a very sensitive manner. This is what has happened to us now. We don't see any shading devices. We see a very, casual approach towards designing of fenestrations. And finally, there is a lot of tussle between the aesthetics and efficiency when we are thinking of envelope design. As Saurabh Didi sir had mentioned already, that if a building is designed well, we are capturing the energy efficiency for a longer period of time, because the equipments that are used inside the building can change. They don't cost much. While as thinking of changing the entire envelope of the building can never be really thought of by in the operational stage of the building. So it is very important to capture the energy efficient measures in the envelope design and work towards efficiency and balancing the aesthetics. This is what has happened to our facade nowadays. You see a lot of air conditioners acting as components for aesthetical glamour on the facade. And it's not only the facade architecture which is changing, but it is also the demand of energy, which is because of these air conditioners that is happening in the domestic sector. So energy consumption in residential buildings typically is governed by architectural design, materials that separate indoor and outdoor environment, artificial means of creating thermal and visual comfort. Of course, that would mean your choice of equipments and systems, the electrical system efficiencies, and whether we can really go and use renewable energy. So these are the factors which we need to consider when we are thinking of putting in the seed for energy efficiency in the residential building design. So with this thought, Bureau of Energy Efficiency and GIZ came out with Econivas Sanhita in December 2018, and it was launched as well, so offered in public domain so that people could start trying to use this kind of an code which can help you capture the energy efficiency. So the Econivas Sanhita had a major aim, and the first aim was to create comfort for people. And therefore, the aim of Econivas Sanhita is to ensure daylight, natural ventilation, and of course, reduce heat gains and heat losses, which would affect the thermal comfort of the people inside, and then later promote energy efficiency. So we are also the code is talking of giving comfort at the same time giving energy efficiency. The focus area of the code typically then looks at building envelope, the mechanical systems and equipments in terms of your fans, in terms of your air conditioners, interior, exterior lighting systems, and of course, electrical systems, the way they are designed and whether we can really use renewable energy. Initially, the part one, as Vikash sir mentioned, that, would be looking at capturing the energy efficiency by way of architectural design and envelope design. And further, the second part which is being launched maybe coming year, would look at the artificial, systems. So right now, part one concentrates on solar passive architecture or climate responsive architecture, where architects have a very major role to play. So Econivas Sanhita part one is basically focusing on building envelope design and architectural design. Now, how is this going to benefit the entire country? It is not only going to benefit the individual users, but the entire country in terms of reducing the energy, savings by 125 billion kilowatt hour. It is also going to reduce have energy saving for almost 20% compared to a conventional building, and also look at the national targets of reduction of CO2 emissions, which is almost about 100 million tons of reduction of CO2. And for individuals, of course, improved ventilation, thermal comfort, and availability of daylight, a healthier environment, which is becoming more and more the need of the times, and reduced electricity bills. So there is a win-win situation, not only for the entire country and the world as such, but also to the individual. Now, what are the components of building envelope that need to be looked at when controlling the energy utilization of the building? So one is the external walls, the roof, the windows, doors which are on the external, if there are any ventilators, if you have any terraces, those are also can be looked as roofs, because that is where the heat is going to come in. And of course, the stilt floor if you have parking on the lower floor. So these are the components of building envelope which need to be concentrated and focused on when looking at your architectural design and maybe for choice of materials. So the part one of the code sets minimum building envelope performance standards by way of ensuring adequate natural ventilation potential, also ensuring adequate daylighting, and looking at limiting heat gains and heat losses from residential envelope, which is called as RETV, which I'm going to explain later in the further slides. The scope of the code is applicable especially to residential buildings with an plot area greater than or equal to 500 meters square, and residential part of the mixed land use building projects with which are built on plot area of more than 500 meters square. One family house, bungalow, two family house, row houses, apartment houses are covered and are in the scope of ENS code, while as commercial buildings which are used for residential purpose but which are commercial, like maybe your dormitories, your hostels, your hotels, all these things will not come under the purview of ENS code. Now, whenever we think of looking at energy efficiency, like I said earlier, our preceders had looked at the climate, and then design the envelope or then design the architecture. So it becomes very important to look at the climate zone and where the building is being built. So right now the NBC climate zone map says that there are 5 different climates existing in India: hot, dry, warm, humid, composite, temperate, and cold. And why does the code refer to these climate zones? Once we have to realize that energy consumption of a building necessarily happens to keep people indoors comfortable. And when the climate is putting some stress onto these kind of comforts, people tend to use artificial means, which then utilizes energy. So we have to understand that if a residence is in a climate which is having maximum climate stress, like example, a hot, dry climate where you are going to have a lot of heat stress happening, compared to a temperate climate where probably the heat stress is not so much. So a residence which is being built in hot, dry climate will need more energy to keep the people comfortable. And we all understand that one of the primary aims of the code is also to look at whether people are comfortable inside. So when the code talks about certain benchmarks, it takes help of this climate zone in India to set the benchmarks. So the benchmark for energy consumption of a residential building in a hot, dry climate would be slightly higher than what the benchmark for a temperate climate would be. Any kind of benchmarks or regulations that are put in the code for thermal properties of materials would again then be reflected because of the climate in which the building is going to be built. So once we understand the importance of climate, we will understand that the various values and benchmarks given for the areas for which ENS controls these areas, they are going to be different. So when we look at Maharashtra, a lot of work had happened earlier, and you find that Maharashtra has been divided into different talukas, and each taluka has a climate. So this reclassification of climate in Maharashtra was done pretty early, and you find that there are 4 different climate zones in Maharashtra. So you will have cold, composite, warm, humid, and hot and dry. So when we are designing in Maharashtra, probably you may have to refer to these climate zones and look at the benchmarks which are given for these climate zones in the code. Now, what are the code provisions? In a summarized fashion, you'll realize that the code looks at natural ventilation, it looks at daylight, and it looks at heat gain, heat losses. So it controls these things. In what way does it control? Natural ventilation is controlled by way of the windows, area of windows, and compared to the carpet area of the dwelling unit. And it also looks at the minimum window to floor area ratio. While as when we are looking at how it looks at and assures provision of good daylight, it talks about the window to wall area ratio, the glass type that you're using, and the property of the glass which allows the light to come in. And when it is controlling the heat gains and heat losses, it looks at the thermal properties of different building envelope materials, whether opaque or whether transparent. So when we start looking at the first aspect where the code talks about natural ventilation, it then controls the openable area of window and carpet area of the dwelling unit. And it also looks at minimum window to floor area ratio. And what is a provision that is given? Now here you see in the picture that there is a window. Typically this window seems to be like a casement window, and you'll find a word written very specifically, which is openable area of window. So the openable area of a casement window is going to be different compared to a sliding window. So it is not just the opening given in the opaque facade, it is the way the window is chosen in terms of what kind of window is chosen, whether it's a casement window, whether it's a sliding window, whether it's a 2-track, whether it's a 3-track. So even though the opening given in the facade is the same, probably the openable area of the window is going to change. So here you find that the provisions are such that minimum openable window to wall area ratio, minimum window to floor area ratio with respect to the climate zone shall not be less than given in the table. So you will have to look at the building and the climate zone in which the building is being designed and then look at an appropriate minimum window to floor area ratio. And you will have to give your window area more than, so this is a minimum window to floor area ratio which has been benchmarked by the code. Now the next provision is about daylight, and the code talks about how can you control the daylight, or how can you assure that enough daylight is available by way of window area compared to the external wall area, and of course the glass type. So you will find here that in the picture that it's not only the opening, it's also the material of the opening, which is the glass. At times you may have louvers, so how are you going to deal with those things? And it will look at the visible light transmittance, which is actually the daylight that can come inside compared to what falls on the pane. So the visible light transmittance of the glass, which is a property of the glass, and you can read this property in the technical sheet provided by the glass vendor. So this becomes very important, and you will have to understand that more the VLT, more daylight. So here you find that the provision by the code says that minimum VLT of the glass used in non-opaque building envelope components, which are transparent or semi-transparent, shall comply with requirements with respect to window to wall area ratio as given in the table. One understands that more the window to wall area ratio, which means more openings, which means more daylight. So if you have more openings, then you can have a glass which will allow a little lesser light to come in, which means that larger the amount of openings in the envelope, lesser the VLT can be used. So here you will find that it gives you the minimum VLT, which assures the amount of daylight that comes in. So if your building has, you will have to look at the design of the buildings. If you're assessing a building, or if you're designing a building, then you will have to see that if your WWR is somewhere between 30 to 40%, then your minimum VLT has to be 0.20. So this controls the kind of light that is coming in and assures good daylight for the occupiers. Now the third part, which is control, the code controls the heat gain and heat losses that come in from the building envelope. And how does it do that? So these are the opaque assemblies specifically. So you have to understand that the roof and the external walls and the fenestration, because fenestration again has certain material to it, we have to control the thermal properties of these materials to restrict the heat that comes in or goes out to achieve the thermal balance. And as already said, that if you are giving thermal comfort to people by way of architectural design, people will not resort to use of artificial means to create comfort for themselves. So the provision given by the code is that the thermal transmittance of roof shall comply with the maximum U value of 1.2 watts per meter square. Now, what is this U value or thermal transmittance? Thermal transmittance, which is also known as U value, is the rate of heat transfer from 1 square meter of an facade when the temperature difference across this facade is 1 degree. So typically the unit for thermal transmittance is how much watts is coming in from 1 square meter when the temperature difference is 1 Kelvin. So you now understand that lower the U value, which means lower the heat transmittance, which means lesser the heat gain inside in hot climates, which means better thermal comfort, which means that lesser energy consumption. So here the code specifically asks you to look at roof assembly and gives a benchmark for the U value, which is 1.2. Now, what about the other envelope? The code kind of deals with the roof separately and deals with other components of the building envelope separately. Now, why roof separately? Because we all know that roof or the horizontal surface receives a maximum solar radiation, and it is almost twice that can fall on other surfaces. So this data is available in national building codes, and you will then relate that roof is a a major culprit in terms of heat ingress into the buildings. So the code looks at roof differently and looks at building envelope separately. Now, when we start looking at building envelope, except the roof, what all comes into picture? So you see that wall material is something very important. Like I said, that the U value of the envelope becomes very, very important, because then it checks and controls the heat gain or loss that is happening through the wall. The orientation of these, on the orientation of the facade on which these the windows are there. Because typically, if the orientation is such that it is facing the sun for most of the time, one easily predicts that there's going to be a lot of heat gain by way of solar radiation. So when the wall material is being controlled, you're looking and controlling the conductive heat gains into the interiors. While as when we are looking at orientation and the openings, we are looking at controlling both. So it is also the heat gain by way of conduction and heat gain by way of solar radiation. Also, it starts looking at the fenestration, and then it starts controlling the opaque, the conductive heat gains through the fenestrations and the radiative heat gains through fenestrations. It also controls the window to wall area ratio. You have always seen that more the window area, more the solar radiation that is going to come in. So it kind of builds a kind of a very nice way of tackling all together. So it's an integrated approach to reduce heat ingress and loss in a building envelope. It also looks at the material of the fenestration. So integrated view, and they have developed, the code gives you a term called RETV, which is residential envelope transmittance value. So this is a very important term and a very important concept, where it is going to have an integrated control on all these 4 or 5 aspects of the envelope. So residential envelope heat transmittance is the net heat gain through the building envelope of the dwelling units divided by the area of the building envelope. So the unit again here is how much watts is coming in or going out per square meter of your envelope. Typically, limiting the RETV value will help in reduction of heat gains from outside into the building and improving the thermal comfort. So how does the code deal with it? The provision in the code says that RETV for building envelope for climate zones. So now here is where the climate zones come into picture, and you will have different benchmarks. So for composite, hot, dry, warm, humid, and temperate climate, it shall comply with the maximum RETV value of 15 watts per meter square. While as for cold climate, it shall comply with maximum RETV value of 1.8 watts per meter, 18 watts per meter square. So how do you, what is the formula for calculating the RETV, and what does it consider? You will find that it has an integrated viewpoint of looking at walling assembly and its orientation. Thermal conduction is controlled from the opaque building envelope components, while a solar heat gain is controlled from the transparent or the non-opaque components of the building. So here you find that the formula takes into consideration these 3 aspects. It also gives you a orientation factor, because as I said, the orientation change would mean change in the heat gains, because the solar radiation falling on different orientation is going to be different for different climate zones, for a different latitude and longitude. Here you will find that there is one more aspect to this formula, which is the A, B, and C. And A, B, and C again are coefficients given by the code to tackle the orientation. Now, when we are looking into this code and the formula for calculating the RETV also allows you to take a different value for the heat gains that is happening through windows. One understands that if there is a window and there is solar radiation coming in from the window, the moment you give a shading device, the amount of solar radiation entering the indoor space is going to be lessened. Now, how does this work? Let me first tell you what is SHGC. Solar heat gain coefficient is the amount of solar radiation that comes in through an opening compared to what falls on the amount of solar radiation that comes in compared to what falls on the glass is a ratio, and this ratio is the solar heat gain coefficient. Now imagine that solar radiation falling on an opening, say let us consider it 100, and if the glass has an SHGC value of 0.5, which means that only 50% of this 100 is going to come in, which means that inside heat, that is solar radiation, which is going to reach the interior, becomes 50. Now, imagine you have given a shading device, and because of this shading device, the 100 that solar radiation which is going to come in will not come in. Say only 75% will come in, which means that because of the shading device, the solar heat gain coefficient of that opening changes. So 75 is what is going to come in instead of 100, and then with the glass which is having a 0.5 SHGC, 50% of 75, which is somewhere around 37.5. So only 37.5 will enter, even though the outside radiation is solar radiation is 100, which means that the solar heat gain coefficient of the entire opening, not only the glass, the way the opening behaves changes. So with a solar shading device, you're able to reduce the SHGC, effective SHGC, and this is what is being considered in the code as well. So once you know the effective SHGC or equivalent SHGC, it can be used in the RETV formula to calculate your RETV, which then has to comply to the code values which are given. So step-by-step code compliance is what we are now going to go into. For composite, hot, dry, warm, humid, and temperate climate, this is a way you'll have to look at the compliance. So first and foremost, look at whether appropriate ventilation is being given by way of checking your openable window to floor area ratio, and then check whether it is compliant to the requirements of the code. Then you start looking at the visible light transmittance of non-opaque building envelope, and then appropriately check the minimum VLT as per the WWR of your design and check whether it's compliant. Move further, then you start checking whether the roof thermal transmittance that you have proposed in your design complies with the maximum U value of 1.2 watts per meter square. Once this is done, then you can start looking at the entire integrated approach towards the envelope, except the roof, where residential envelope transmittance value need to be calculated for your own design. And then you have to check whether it complies with the maximum RETV of 15 watts per meter square. For cold climates, it's a little different because the value of RETV changes. Here, the value of RETV, please excuse for the mistake in the slide. It's 18 watts per meter square, not 1.8 watts per meter square. So for cold climates, again, you have to check whether enough ventilation is available, enough daylight is available, whether you are limiting the heat gains from the roof, and then check whether the heat gains through your integrated envelope is being limited to 18 watts per meter square degree Kelvin. Now, how do you check this compliance? This is a way to do it, but how do you check? So BE has already provided a tool. It's a Java-based ENS compliance check tool, and it is available on Bureau of Energy Efficiency website for download. The link is already given here. So those who are interested can download this tool, and it can then be used to check compliances. It's a very easy to use tool, and you'll find that you can start playing with this tool to understand, change the maybe WWR of your design, change the walling assembly, change the roof assembly, and see how it affects your compliance to the code. So this tool what you need to do is you need to enter the data related to the building envelope, the material, area, orientation, shading elements, glazing type, everything like which needs to be looked at needs to be entered. And then compliance can be viewed for each building and detailed report can be generated. So when we are looking at each building, we will first have to look at the dwelling types and then check the compliance for each dwelling type. When all the dwelling types are compliant to the code, then the building becomes compliant to the code. So what we are going to do here is we are going to look at a case example to understand ENS compliance, and maybe if the case that I'm going to discuss is not compliant for certain aspects, then we are going to maybe change a few aspects or change the characteristics of the building design to achieve compliance. So this is going to be a step-by-step way of achieving compliance. So let's take an example in Nagpur hot dry composite climate. It's a standalone building with 5P+5 structure, 10 number of buildings. So this is a typical layout, and these details have to be then entered into your online. It's not online, you can download it. It's a Java based tool. So you can enter these things first. So the tool understands what from where context of the residential building. So what is the method? So first check building type, whether residential, commercial in the entire site, which are the residential buildings, which are the commercial buildings, and then you have to look at only residential buildings. Then identify typical building with respect to its planning. Check orientation of typical building. So if in a plan you have different types of building, then all the buildings will have to be taken separately and showed compliance too. Further, check configuration of the dwelling units in the identified typical building and understand the number of various types of dwelling units. So if you have one typical dwelling unit which are maybe 10 in number, you need not do the compliance check for all. If you have done one typical, it means that all others will be compliant. Except a typical dwelling unit would also consider same orientation. So if you have the same plan and it changes its orientation, then it is not a typical dwelling unit. So here you will find that building A, B, C, E, F, J, I, and H. So all these buildings are having same orientation and probably the same dwelling unit types. While as building D and G are having different orientation. So you'll find that the plans are same, but buildings are oriented differently. So for showing ENS compliance right now, when I'm demonstrating, maybe I will take only one building and one typical flat to show compliance. You can repeat this kind of a thing for other orientations and other buildings. So we are demonstrating compliance for only one sample residential unit type in building A. So if this is a building A, there are two flats, which means that these two flats which have the same planning but different orientation. So they are not typical type. So these are two different types and we are going to show for only one unit. So we are taking only one unit to show compliance. So let's start understanding what are the building envelope details of this particular dwelling unit or the flat in the apartment. So the wall assembly typically is 230 mm solid burnt brick clay, a clay brick with 20 mm external cement plaster and 15 mm internal gypsum plaster. The roof assembly is 180 mm thick of RCC slab with 25 mm dense concrete on top, 100 mm thick brickbat coba, 15 mm thick finished with IPS flooring over 25 mm concrete, which is laid to slope to drain away the water. Windows and sliding doors are such a fashion that they are 5 mm thick single clear glass with aluminum powder coated frames. The doors are typically factory press laminated doors 40 mm thick. And right now there are no shading devices provided for windows and glazed doors on the exteriors. Now let's start checking the ENS compliance, and after entering all the details of building A and typically that flat in ENS compliance tool, we'll find this kind of an compliance which comes out, that window to floor area ratio for that particular dwelling. So I'm not yet talking about the building, understand this. We have to do it dwelling by dwelling. So WFR, window to floor area ratio, calculated values 16.48, and compliance required as per ENS is 12.5. So that is a minimum compliance. So here you will find that for WFR, it is showing ENS compliance because it is allowing more ventilation and therefore better indoor. The VLT, visible light transmittance, is working out to be 85%, while as compliance required is 27%. So here minimum 27% for the WWR. So here also you find that the building is compliant. Then we start looking at the U value of the roof or the thermal transmittance of the roof. The calculated value is 2.06 watt per meter square Kelvin, while as compliance requirement is 1.2 watts per meter square Kelvin. So here you'll find that the U value of the roof is higher, almost double than what is given as a requirement for the code. This means that it is going to allow more heat to ingress in, and therefore thermal comfort is not going to be good, and it shows that it is non-compliant. And the RETV, which is an integrated approach to look at the thermal transmittance of the entire envelope, you find that the calculated values are 17.44. Here again, watts per meter square, while as compliance requirement is 15. So here again, the calculated value is more than the requirement, which means that more heat is going to come in and therefore non-compliant. So opening size and type, which is 2-track window, door, are appropriate and therefore WFR is compliant. Window to wall area ratio and appropriate choice of glass with appropriate VLT and U value are chosen for this project. With correct VLT, it complies with the recommended value. However, we'll have to do some modifications in flat A1 to comply with ENS to achieve compliant value for U roof and RETV. So now we are going to see what we can do for the roof first. So when you start looking at the as-is roof which is there, the U value works out to be 2.062. Now we are going to consider overdeck insulation for the roof and then calculate U value for the roof. After calculating the U value for the roof, this U value with the respective floor area need to be again entered into the compliance check tool, which will then overall calculate the U value for the roof, and then we check the compliance. So the modified roof assembly with expanded polystyrene 50 mm, which is being applied as an addition or modification to the specification of the roof assembly, gives you an U value of 0.55, which then becomes compliant to the requirement of ENS. Now, when we start looking at RETV, we said let's not do all the measures at one time. Let's try modifying the envelope one by one. So maybe the as-is case, which is for RETV compliance, first we check. If it is not compliant, then probably just give an overhang shading to the window, then check compliance. If it is compliant, fine. But if it is not compliant, then we'll have to provide side fins to shade the window and reduce the solar heat gains through the window, and then again check compliance. If not, so if the architectural modifications are not giving you compliance, then you may have to change the material of the glass. So when you want to change the material of the glass, it means a slightly added cost, and that is why we have considered that iteration the last. So then maybe change the clear glass to a high performance glass, maybe a single glaze or a double glaze. If single glaze is not working and becoming compliant, then you may have to work with a double glaze. So right now, the case one where we are trying to provide 350 overhang for windows and doors. So in the section, you will find that there is a 350 overhang, and in the plan also, you'll find that there is a chhajja given, which is 350 thick, wide. And when you enter in the online compliance tool, you'll find that RETV for case one, which was 16.55 watts per meter square. Now for this, for case one, which is the modified one where we have added the, horizontal shading device, it is working out to be 16.55. But for the as is case, it was 17.44. So by giving a shading device, it has reduced, no doubt, but it's yet not compliant as per ENS. For ENS, you require 15. So we have to get down the RETV further. So the next step is give a side fin. So here assume a 300 vertical fin to the opening. And then what happens? Let's check. So once we enter that, we'll find that the RETV has reduced to 15.87 watts per meter square, which is less than your as-is case, but however, yet not compliant because it has to go down to 15 or less than 15. So now we'll have to change the choice of our glass, and that is where we are going towards. So now we think of providing a single glazed high performance glass. So you look at the different glass available and maybe select one. So here we have selected the clear Cosmos glass with a solar factor of 0.29 and U value of 3.8. It is a 5 thick high performance glass with a little lower U value and SHGC with aluminum powder coated frame. So we have not changed the frames here. Now what happens with this? Now here you find that the RETV for this case where we have changed the single clear glass to a high performance single glaze unit. We have yet not gone to double glaze, and we have been able to reduce the RETV to 14.88, which shows that now it is compliant to ENS requirements. So you will find that by way of change of architectural design, by shading, giving enough shading to openings or windows and doors which are externally on the external facade, and by merely using a simple single glazed high performance glass and insulation to the roof, because roof is something separate, but you'll find that you are able to comply to this the requirements of the code, which is less than 15 watts per meter square. So if these are the requirements for ENS compliance, WFR 12.5, BLT 27. Now this BLT is red depending on the WWR, URoof 1.2 and RETV 15. So you'll find that it's a summary that I've shown that the as-is case, you'll find that fares okay and is compliant with the air, the ventilation, the daylight, but is not compliant with the heat gain and heat losses by way of a roof and by way of all other envelope except the roof. So by giving a expanded polystyrene insulation 15 thick, you have been able to comply to the requirement of the code, which is URoof comes down to 0.56. The next case where you have added a overhang, horizontal overhang, you are yet not able to completely comply, but got down the RETV to 16.55 from 17.44. Further, overhang and vertical fins both given, you have been able to get it down to 15.87 watts per meter square. And further, which was not compliant again. So here then you have changed the glass from single glass to high performance with low SHGC and U value, and you have been able to comply to the RETV requirements of the code, which is less than 15, which is right now 14.88 watts per meter square. So this is a way you can comply to the code by way of iterations in your architectural design, your orientation, your choice of materials specifically. So now, does it mean that, if ENS is controlling so many things of the envelope, does it mean that there is no flexibility for designers and architects. So it is not so. There is a lot of flexibility. So you have flexibility to select a material for roof or walls. You have flexibility to design your windows. You have flexibility to design your architectural facades in terms of WWRs, the types of windows that you are going to choose, whether they are going to be louvered, non-louvered, casement, sliding, 2-track, 3-track. So all those things are possible. You can also choose a very good looking shading device for your windows and doors. And there's a lot you can explore in terms of shading devices. And finally, selection of glazing types also can be looked at. So some articulation in facade design is possible, by way of which you can easily make the building look interesting. There is a new architectural grammar which is now emerging. You know that when Industrial Revolution happened and there was a lot of electrification, introductions of elevators, escalators, you found that great architects used these kinds of tools to modify the way the building looked. You had the Lloyd's building where they placed the transparent elevator on the corners, the building started looking different. So now is the time for the architects to explore how architectural grammar can respond to the need of the times and what are the needs of the time to create comfort at lesser energy consumption. So if you take that as your one-liner objective, that one-liner can drive you, can give you better opportunities for designing and articulating your facade design. So there is a lot of possibilities that you can really use. And so the code is not restrictive. The code is pretty flexible, allowing you newer approaches, giving you new directions, and probably a new grammar which is going to be evolved in the future, where the architecture responds to creating comfort, but not at extra energy. So thank you. Hopefully the session was useful.